Hello and welcome to this tutorial. This is specifically for the Achilles Akesho interns, specifically those who are doing the web development and API design track. Even more specifically, this tutorial is geared towards the interns who joined us a little bit later and are now trying to catch up. Many of you asked for a more compacted version of the original 3.5 hour session that we had. And we're just gonna set up our front end from scratch such that in your catching up journey, you at least have the building blocks in place in your computer so that you don't stumble in the future because you didn't have the basic building blocks set up correctly. And so yeah, we're gonna build the front end from scratch, literally from zero. Okay, so don't worry about that. Now, because you've been viewing the past sessions, the Git sessions, even this web session, the previous video, which I'm just going to recall this diagram from there. Yeah, we saw that, when you're doing web application development, your application is usually split up into, the front end, which is where your users are going to live 100% of the time. If your users are human beings, okay, they're going to live here. They're going to interact with the application here. And then we said that there's going to be a back end. We'll get to that a bit later. You will get to that a bit later in your catch-up journey as well. We have the backend where the database lives, which has all the data that our application requires, and then we said that the front end and the back end speak through APIs, which you will encounter later as well. And so just keep this diagram in mind. And also know that for this tutorial, we're going to be focused on just the front end, just setting that up. All right, so I'm just going to go back to here. And what this is this is a checklist. This is a checklist that you can go through as well, okay, when you watch this back. And basically what we're going to do is, again, we're going to start from zero, and we're going to execute many steps on our computer just to make sure that we have the project set up. I'll start from the top. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to create a repository on GitHub. This assumes that you already have GitHub accounts because you've been catching up with the other sessions as well outside of the web development sessions. There is a dedicated Git session that is available on YouTube that you can go get, okay? So if you walk through that session, you know that you created your GitHub accounts there, and you set Git up on your computer as well. Okay, so I'm not going to go through that again, but this tutorial that you're watching right now assumes that you already have a GitHub account. And I'll just show you mine, for example. Okay, so this is mine. Okay, so you're gonna have something like this. Of course, yours is going to be a little bit different because you may or may not have projects on yours, okay? So yeah, this is the first assumption that is being made in this tutorial, that you have a GitHub account. And so yes, the first assumption is you already have an account. Now that that is true, let's create a new repository for this project. And so I'm going to go to GitHub and I'm going to follow this checklist, okay? Actually, for now, let me just split the screen. I will call out that I am on a Windows computer. Okay, so I'm on Windows 11, just upgraded yesterday. And so now I'm just going to do everything that's on the left on the right-hand side for this particular checklist item. Okay, so I'm going to create a new repository that represents our project. I'm going to call mine Angscribe Catch-up because this is for those catching up. Just copy that. When you are on GitHub, you may actually land here, not on this page, but on this page, okay, with the overview page. And the way you can create a new repository from here is you go to the very top, create new, and you can click the plus or you can click the drop down and you can click new repository. If you are already on the repositories tab, then you can click new, but you can also click up here. So I'm gonna click up here, new repository. Now I copied the name, so let me just paste it here. The name is going to be Angscribe Catch-up, and the description is going to be this: a very minimal personal encrypted notes taker. This is the application that we are making. Visibility, I'm going to leave mine public. As you may recall, if a repository is public, anyone on the internet can access it, that is, see what's in it. If it's private, then only invited members can do that. I'm going to leave mine as public. Start with the template. No, we're not going to use any templates because we're starting from scratch. Add a README. Yeah, I'm going to add a README. which, as you know, describes your project. And then add a git ignore. I'm also going to do that. Let me click the drop down. And now I did say that we're going to put Python to the side, but there is no reason that we cannot have a git ignore for Python, okay? Because later, from your perspective, in a few sessions, when we reach the Python part where we set up the database, the backend, we will be glad that we had a git ignore file that was set to ignore Python related things. So that's the only reason I'm putting that in here right now. It's for later, it's not for now. Add a license, not going to need that. And then I'm just going to create repository. Okay. So now the repository is created in my account. If you're following along in your account, this will be created in your account. Okay, so this is our project that has been created. Our README has just the description that we filled in when we were creating the repository. However, we need a way to take this project and put it on our computers because that's where we're going to be developing this application from. By the way, let me just take a second to show you kind of what that application is going to be, at least. So I'm going to do this again, and I'm going to go to low fidelity screens. Okay. This is by no means the final look of the application. In fact, as you're catching up, you're going to see that we're going to make a lot of changes to this initial idea. But we're going to have an encrypted note-taking application. Okay, and we're going to start from somewhat unconventionally, maybe. We're going to start from not the login and sign up pages, but we're going to start from the home page. Okay, and so our users are going to be able to add notes, create them, give them a title and content, click create, and then have access to notes that they have created in the past, right? So if I create another note, that's going to show up on the side here as well. The encrypted part is going to be in terms of the database, okay, which again, we don't have to worry about that right now. You will encounter that as you catch up. So this is what we're trying to build across all the sessions that we will be having on top of your applications that you are going to build, okay, as well. So yeah, we're going to be having some parallel learning happening, and we're going to encounter many concepts, okay? So this is just an example application that doesn't seem to have much going on, but it really does have a lot going on, especially when we dive a little bit deeper into these concepts. Now I'm going to go back to the GitHub. We left off when we had the GitHub project on our GitHub accounts, and now we're going to take them to our computer, right? And so to do that, by the way, if you somehow lose yourself and you're not on this page, okay, you can click up here, for example, to go back to your profile, and then you'll have to find your repositories. And then you can find this repository, our project. You can click that, and then you will end up on this page. To get this project on our computer, in other words, to clone this project, I'm going to click this code button here, and I'm going to click SSH. The reason I'm clicking SSH is because, as you may have encountered in the previous sessions, you have hopefully already set up your Git in your computer by giving it a username, an email, and even set up some, keys that you've shared with GitHub, right? So that's another assumption I'm making here, is that you've already set up SSH keys. Okay, so I'm going to copy this, and then I'm going to open a terminal window. Now, because I'm on Windows, I'm going to use PowerShell, okay, because I know that that's baked in already. I'm going to say PowerShell. I've just searched for it, and I click, and here we have PowerShell. So when I say the word terminal, if I'm on Windows, I will be referring to PowerShell. Now, of course, you have CMD and everything else, but PowerShell is what I'm going to use, just for consistency. So I'm going to take this down for a second. Remember, we had copied this SSH link, and I'm going to minimize this for now. And in PowerShell, there are a few things we are noticing. So first of all, anything that you can interact with on your computer by clicking the actual icons and all that, you can do as well in the terminal, okay? The first thing we have to decide, though, is where is this project going to live on our computers, okay? Now, some of you will put this on the desktop, for example, which is fine. And so let's actually do this. This is my desktop right here. But I have to make sure that I am also at the desktop from the terminal's point of view. Right now, we are in C, Windows, System 32. We need to make sure that we are actually in the desktop. And so I'm going to type a cd command. I'm going to do this tilde. This is if you're on a standard keyboard, this symbol is above is to the left of the 1. Where you see the number 1 key, to the left, you should see something like this. Okay. And I'm going to say /desktop. I'm going to hit tab a couple of times, and there you go. I'm now on the desktop. Well, I'm not yet on the desktop. I will be at the desktop when I click enter. So now if you notice over here, we were in System 32, but right now we are on the desktop from the terminal's point of view. This would be the equivalent of going to your File Explorer, for example, which mine is right here, and then going to C, which is, let me go to this PC, C is right here, right? And then going to Users, and then clicking Athena, which just happens to be my username on this computer, and then clicking Desktop. So I'm just going to scroll down, find the desktop. Yeah, so this is the equivalent of what we have just done over here. So now we are on the desktop from the terminal's point of view. Right? And the reason we're on the desktop is we said, this is where we want our project to be. Okay, now how does the project get here? So just to remind ourselves, on GitHub, I clicked here and I copied this. I'm now going to say git clone, and I'm going to paste this right there. Now I pasted it with the keyboard shortcut, but you can also right click and it will be pasted there. And then I'm going to hit enter. And if my Git is set up correctly on my machine, as it would have been if you followed the previous sessions on Git, you will see something like this, cloning into here. You'll see some stuff here, receiving objects 100%, done. And yeah, we have a kind of a summary over here. Okay, now, because we're on the desktop, and I promised you that if you can interact with your computer via the terminal the same way that you would if you were using the kind of graphical user interface, what I expect now is if I go to my actual desktop in the GUI, in the graphical user interface, I should see a new folder. And indeed I do, right? You see this? Okay, zoom in over here. We previously had just the recycle bin and this other folder, but now we have another folder here called Enkscribe Catchup. And this folder represents our project. Yes, indeed, the same project that we had created on our GitHub. So now that project is also on our computer. So having done that, let me just clear the screen. Okay, a bit of a weird thing there. Clear the screen, you can do that with clear. If I do ls, which is to list the files and folders on my computer via the terminal, via PowerShell, and I hit enter, I can see, yes, indeed, it is recognizing that I have a desktop folder on my desktop. Okay, a little bit confusing, but this is just the way I have set up my computer. I have a folder called desktop on the desktop. But it can also recognize that we have our Enkscribe Catchup project. Now, of course, it doesn't see the recycle bin, so it doesn't list the recycle bin here. But ls is a command that you can type just to see what contents are available where you are right now from the point of view of the terminal. And because we're in the same place, that is, we're on the desktop, we see the same files, okay? Files and folders. So we see this desktop and this Enkscribe backup folder. Those are all listed here. Okay. I'm going to go into the Enkscribe Catchup project that we just cloned from GitHub that is now on our desktop. And I do that by saying cd. Okay, I'm going to clear the screen. I'm going to say cd, and I'm going to start typing the name of our project, en, and I can hit tab on my keyboard. So if I hit tab once, the terminal will autocomplete for me. Okay, now it does add some dots and slashes over here, but don't worry about that. If we hit enter on our keyboards, we see that now we are on this path. In other words, we're in C users, Athena on the desktop, and now we're inside AngScribe catch-up. Okay, that's perfectly fine. Now, if I go back to our checklist, so what have we done? We have created the repository on our GitHub accounts. Indeed. We have done this. We've given it a name, gave it a description, and we gave it a gitignore file. We chose for Python. We're not going to use that right now. We can use that much, much later from your point of view. And so we have done a bunch of, putting the project on the desktop and going into it from the point of view of the terminal, the PowerShell terminal. But there is something that we have to do right now. So if I go here, because we're on Windows, PowerShell, we're going to execute very, very many things while we build our application. Some of those executions will be flagged or prevented by Windows itself, just because that's the default state of the security in Windows. Now, that security, unfortunately, is going to be a barrier for our development, right? Because we're going to execute some stuff, but Windows is not going to allow us to do so by default. So we have to let Windows know that it's okay for us to execute those scripts that we're going to execute, or those commands that we're going to execute throughout our development process. And to do that, I'm going to use this command over here, still in the PowerShell terminal, okay? I'm going to use this command over here, which I'm just going to copy. Okay, let me do this. I'm just going to copy that. I'm going to go to my terminal, which is still open, and I'm going to right-click to paste. And what this command basically says is, I want you, for the current user, to allow executions, okay? Change the execution policy such that it is allowed for the current user. Basically, that's what this means. And then I'm going to hit enter. And then it doesn't seem like anything happened, but let me zoom out for a second. But what I can do is I can then confirm that this setting has been changed, okay? And I can confirm that via yet another command here called get execution policy -list. I'm going to paste that. I'm going to hit enter. Okay, so we see a list of execution policies. We had just changed the execution policy up here. And so in this list, if everything worked, it should reflect what we did up here. So I'm going to go to the current user, which is over here. And I can indeed see that it is set to remote signed, which is what we did up here. Okay, so if you see this, then everything's fine and we can proceed. I'm going to clear the screen once more. So now I also assume that you have a code editor installed. I am personally using Visual Studio Code, which I have pinned to the taskbar over here. Oh, which you cannot see, but I have Visual. Okay, let me fix that. 1 second. There you go. So now you can see my taskbar, and I do have Visual Studio Code pinned to my taskbar. Now I have already installed Visual Studio Code. If you have not yet installed Visual Studio Code, and you do not have another alternative that you're going to use, then you can get Visual Studio Code. And you can do that by going to your browser, typing Visual Studio Code, which is where we're going to be writing all our code, and then going to download Visual Studio Code. Okay, and since you're on Windows, you're likely going to be interested in this column. Obviously, if you're on Linux and Mac, you have other packages that you can install. But because we're on Windows, you can either click here, or if you have a different architecture of your computer, kind of different from the usual one, then you can choose either ARM64, x64, and all that stuff. But most likely, if you just click this button, a download will begin, and you will be able to, obviously save this file, which is an exe file, and install VS Code as you would any other program that you have installed before. Another assumption I'm making is you at least have a code editor. In this case, I'm just going to use Visual Studio Code, which is not to be confused with Visual Studio, because that is the purple one. If you already have Visual Studio, that's not what this is, because that's the purple one, okay? Not this one, but this one. Okay, so I already have it installed, so let me open it. Okay, I'm gonna minimize this window, this browser. This is our terminal, and if you've installed VS Code correctly, you should be able to. I'm in the location of our project, and I want to open Visual Studio Code in this location. And so all I have to do is to type code space dot. If I hit enter, indeed, oh, you weren't able to see that, but indeed Visual Studio Code has opened, and we have just two files in our repository, the gitignore, which was Python stuff, and the readme that we included when we were creating the repository. Let me just zoom in a little bit. And then let me also remove, these agentic stuff on the side. Of course, this section for you will be a little bit different because you may or may not have different projects. Okay, so don't worry about this part if it's different. It's fine. I'm going to minimize this for a second and go back to our checklist. So we have done the set execution policy stuff in our PowerShell terminals to let Windows know that it's fine for us to execute scripts that we're going to do throughout the process. Okay, we've done that. We've done that. And okay, we've installed Visual Studio Code if you didn't have it already. And now let's go here. Okay, now when we are developing for the web, when you're writing our own software in general, actually, if you leave alone the web, when you're writing our own software, it's likely that we'll need someone else's software to get ourselves started. And that is indeed the case for this web development. Okay, and so we're going to install Node.js, and then we're going to install PNPM. We don't need to do this right now, actually. And then, of course, we've already done the VS Code, so I'm going to tick that. But let's go back up here. Install Node.js to run JavaScript on our computer. Okay, so that is the use. So if I just go back to our drawing over here, so what we're doing is we have to have Node installed. Node is where our JavaScript is going to run. Okay, so inside of Node, which is the environment that's going to understand JavaScript and run it, inside of Node, that's where our JavaScript that we're going to write in our project is going to run. So Node in this case is actually technically referred to as the runtime, which just means, again, it's just an environment where something else is running. Okay, in this case, JavaScript. Okay, massively oversimplified that definition, but that's really what it is. You have different runtimes for different programs. If you're a Java developer, not JavaScript, but Java, you have your own runtime. Python has its own runtime. So many of these languages have their own environments that understand them, in which they run. For our web development purposes, that runtime is Node, and that's where our JavaScript is going to run. Okay, so we have to install Node on our computer. A good thing to do before you install a program is to first check that you don't have it, really. Okay, because we can go installing things that we already have, and then we've spent time and data doing something we didn't have to. Okay, so how are we going to check that we have Node? I'm going to open the terminal again. And in PowerShell, I'm going to, actually, no, I can do it here. So I'm going to say node, which is the command that we would have to run in our terminal to access Node. I would say node space -- version. Now, if we have Node, when I hit enter, I will see a number, something, point something, point something. If we don't have Node, we will see a warning. Okay, so let me hit enter, and we saw a warning. The term node is not recognized by Windows as a name of, function, script file, or anything. So we do not have Node installed. This idea of some command -- version is actually very common. We're going to encounter this again. At least we're going to encounter the -- version part for different programs that we're going to install throughout our development process. But we can see that we don't have Node, so let me clear the screen. And let's go and get Node. So I'm going to open my browser, open a new tab, And I'm just going to type Node.js. This is indeed large. Let me zoom out for a second. And I can see Node.js. This is what I want to click. And indeed, here I am. Now I can see a button called Get Node. And I can see that in order to get Node, I have to select a couple of things, okay? I can say, oh, which version do you want? If you have many versions and you're trying to decide, usually going for the LTS is fine. For Windows, yeah, for Windows. Using what? Now this is where it gets a bit slightly annoying, okay, because here I can only click Docker, I can only click chocolatey, and I can't even click N, okay? So in order to get Node, we have to already have other things installed, at least according to this official Node.js page. But we don't have these on our computers by default. It is likely that you don't have that. Okay, so with npm yarn or pnpm. So it turns out that there's an easier way to install Node on your computer, right, without going through here. And so what we're going to do is a bit of a two-step process. We want to get Node, right? But we're going to get something else first called NVM. And NVM is a Node version manager, and we're going to first install NVM so that we can install Node a little bit more simply than having to, install Docker and get familiar with Docker, install chocolatey, which is not that straightforward for some reason. Okay, so we're first going to install NVM onto our computers. Keeping in mind that what we want is Node, let's kind of branch a little bit to install NVM. I'm gonna type NVM in my browser, and here we go. Node version manager tool. I'm gonna click that, and when I do, I can see download button over here. And when I do, I get brought to this table, which is asking me what version of NVM I want to download. Now we're safe just getting the latest one, which is 1.2.2. Now I can download NVM from GitHub, but I can also download from these mirror links, which is a little bit more straightforward. So I'm going to click mirror download. Either is fine. We can see a zip file is trying to get saved to my computer. Let me save it to the downloads location. Click save. And we can see that there is a download that has already completed. It is 4.8 megabytes. Okay, I'm going to click this folder to open the location, which is my downloads folder anyway. And we can see a zip file over here. Let's extract this zip file. I'm going to right click and I'm going to click extract all. It's going to say where to extract it, which is this current location, which is fine. Click extract. I haven't changed anything. And it has extracted, as you can see here, but it has also opened the extracted folder. Okay, so I've just isolated the extracted folder, and I can see an nvm underscore setup.exe file. Okay, this is an executable file, and therefore it will be the one that actually installs NVM on our computer. So I'm going to click that. And I am being asked for a password. You may not, though. Let me enter mine, hit enter, and I can see an icon has showed up. Let me click that. Okay, so I see this window over here, in which I have to accept the agreement, otherwise I can't use the program. Click next. Okay, and in this next window, it's trying to ask me, or not ask me, it's trying to say where the NVM program is going to be installed, in which location. Okay, now, if you have just one account on your computer, then it's fine, you can just click next. However, if you have more than one account on your computer, for example, myself, this is why I keep getting asked for passwords. If you have more than one user on your Windows computer, then here you can specify which location you want the NVM to be installed. It will default to the administrators, looks like. Let me copy this into some notepad. So this is the location that it's trying to install NVM, which is also okay. But for my setup, for example, I am currently logged in as, remember our terminal? I'm logged in as Athena and not Ariadne. So I actually want to change the location to this account. And I'm simply going to replace this with Athena. Okay, so now it's going to be installed in this user's account. Again, if you only have one user, this part is irrelevant to you. But Just know that you can change the location where NVM, the actual program, will be installed. I have changed it because this is what I would prefer. I'm going to copy that and I'm going to paste it over here. There you go. So now I've changed the location. And then I'm going to hit next. I'm going to hit next. I don't need to touch this. Next, I don't need to touch these options. Default is fine. We also do not need to give our email address. So I'm just going to hit next without typing anything. And then it's going to confirm that the destination location where NVM is going to be installed is indeed C, users Athena, appdata, local, NVM, which is fine. I'm going to install this. And it's now asking to open with PowerShell. That's fine. I will leave this box checked and I will click finish. Okay. Now that I've clicked finish, let's try to see if the command nvm works. Hit enter. Interesting. So it still doesn't work, even if we just installed nvm. Now I'm going to close this terminal. Usually if you install a program and then you try to use it and it's not recognized, try to close and open your terminal again. Okay, so I'm just going to close this one. And actually, let me close everything. I'm going to open PowerShell. Not PowerPoint, but PowerShell. Okay. And then we're going to try to use NVM again. Okay, great. So we are no longer getting the error. Okay, but we just had to close our terminal and open it again. So it refreshes, right? So it refreshes. But now we have to find our way back to our project. Okay, so I'm going to do exactly what we did last time. Let me clear the screen. I'm going to say cd, which is to change the directory or to change a folder from where we currently are to somewhere else. cd, this, okay, if you do run into this, I changed my keyboard by accident, but that's fine. I can go down here. Instead of English, UK, I want to select United States International. Okay, and so everything should be fine now. I'm going to remove that symbol, and I'm going to use this symbol. Yeah, that's what I wanted. cd/de. And all I have to do now is hit tab on my keyboard. Okay, now there are many folders that start with de. One of them is demo, but if I hit tab again, I will indeed find desktop. And actually right now I can let me just hit the arrow keys left and right. We're back to where we were. I can continue to hit tab. To go to Ngscribe catch-up, right? So we're kind of using the terminal to autocomplete for us. Then I'm going to hit enter. And now we're back. Now we're back. Clear the screen. Make sure NVM is still working. It is. Okay. The reason I say it's still working is if it wasn't, first of all, we get a version number. But if it wasn't, we would still have seen that red text. Okay. Clear the screen one more time. So let's not forget the reason why we got NVM. The reason we got NVM was so we could install Node. So now let's get Node. Now, how do you get Node from NVM? Remember, NVM is Node Version Manager. And so you can install Node from NVM. Let's do that. NVM install LTS. Hit enter. Okay. So this will download the latest long-term supported version of Node. So you can see downloading Node.js version 24.18.0, which, remember, if we go back here, 28.18.0, right? So it's a kind of a roundabout way we've used to install the same version of Node. So I'm going to go back. And okay, we are already done. However, we're getting a message that if you want to use this version, type nvm use this. Now I'm just going to copy and paste this. So I'm going to select this, right click, that has copied it, right click, that has pasted it. I'm going to hit enter. I myself am being asked for a password. And now we're using Node 24.18. Let me clear the screen. How do we know that Node is installed? Well, you can type Node and then see what happens. So I'm going to hit enter. Okay, great. Now, because we didn't get red text, we see that we now have Node. Okay. Now, if you're in this position, there's usually a way to get out of these terminals. If you try Control C twice, you will get out. Okay. Clear the screen once more. Okay. So now we have Node installed in our computer. If you wanted to check the version, you'd say node space dash dash version. Hit enter. And if someone asks you what version of Node you're using, now you know how to check. I'm going to go back to our checklist. Install Node.js. We've done that. Fantastic. Now we have the runtime in which our JavaScript is going to run. Cool. What's next in our checklist? Now, when you install Node, you get a package manager by default. You get npm by default. npm. And indeed, if I go to my terminal and try to say npm dash dash version, indeed, we see another version here of npm. npm is Node Package Manager. Because again, as we saw in previous sessions, in the previous session that you caught up on, we talked about dependency. When we're writing our own software, we have to depend on other people's software. But even those people have to depend on other people's software. And so software is basically a chain of other people's software, kind of chained together for stuff to work. Those other people's software that they've written that we're going to use are also called packages. Okay, can be called packages. And so that we, the programmers, don't have to bother ourselves with checking which package is correct with which version of someone else's thing. Okay, a package manager does that for us. The default package manager that you get when you install Node is Node Package Manager. However, we're going to not use that, not because it's bad, but there are better alternatives. Okay, one of them is npm. It's basically npm with a p in front of it. Okay, so that's what we're going to install. Now, luckily for us, this installation is not going to be as involved as the one that we've just gone through while installing nvm. We go to the checklist. Okay, so now install npm. Okay, let me actually, you know what? Let's go to the install pnpm. There are so many letters flying around right now. It's easy to lose track of which one is which. But let me just go to the pnpm page. Okay, so pnpm, I've just typed that into my browser. And we can see that the reason people use pnpm is that it's fast, it saves some storage on your disk, which are the two reasons why I'm using it. Okay, so this is the pnpm homepage. We have a video by Theo. But yes, so we're using pnpm to save time, save disk space. How do we install pnpm? Well, we do it via this command. So I'm going to copy this. I'm going to paste it. So you can see that we're using npm, the default package manager, to install pnpm, which is yet another package manager. Okay, I'm going to hit enter. Going to see some things happening on the screen. And we're done. So we've added one package in 5 seconds. Okay, great. Now we can see that npm itself has an update. Okay, it's good to update your package managers. So let me just copy this, paste that, hit enter, just to be up to date, you know? Okay, just know that we have upgraded npm, even if we're not going to use it much, okay, because we're going to use pnpm, but we've still upgraded npm to the latest version. I'm going to clear the screen. This is probably the last time we're going to see npm, or at least the last time we're going to type npm. Now onwards, we're going to do pnpm, okay? In our checklist, we are done. Okay, and we've already seen the VS Code. Okay, so that's great. But now let's actually get the folders and files that we're going to need for our front-end application ready. There are so many ways to do this. The way that I'm going to be using is TanStack. I'm going to use TanStack which let me visit this URL. Okay, so here I am in the, TanStack documentation. Documentation is something you're going to be reading a lot. And here we go. Yes, we have some install instructions. Yes, we are impatient. And so we're going to use pnpm, okay? Because that, again, that's the one we're going to use. We're not going to use npm anymore. And luckily for us, pnpm was already selected by default. So I don't have to do anything. I just have to copy this command. And then in the terminal, where we are in our project, I'm going to paste this command, which only works because we have pnpm installed from some moments ago. Remember, this is what our project is right now. When we opened it in VS Code, it just had the git ignore and the readme file. We're going to come back to this, but keep this in the back of your mind. We only have 2 files in our repository. But now I'm going to hit enter after entering this command, and we see a bunch of things happening, a bunch of things being downloaded. So I'm just going to wait for those to be done. Okay, so we are done, but now we're being asked some questions. Luckily, if you see these notes, we have what you need to select when you're asked these questions. I'm going to put this, let's put this to the side, put this up here. Sorry, to the side, and let me zoom out. So we're being asked, which framework are you using? Now, in the previous session that you have already caught up with, we saw that, when you're doing web development, you could do it in a couple of ways. You could just use, the regular HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, right? That you've probably come across at some point. Or you could use a framework, okay? And what a framework does is it kind of handles some things for us so we don't have to think about it. It also sets up our project so we don't have to think about it, okay? It is supposed to be easier, especially if your project is large, right? If your front-end project is sizable enough, usually using a framework is preferred as opposed to using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, even though there is nothing wrong with that. Okay, and there's some projects that do in fact use regular HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. You will hear people who are using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript by themselves without a framework calling it vanilla. Okay, so if someone says this project is using vanilla HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, just know that they're not using a framework. But we are going to use a framework. And so we're being asked which one. We're going to use React, okay? The way you can select is you can use your arrow keys on your keyboard, up, down, up, down. It was already on React. I'm going to leave it on React. I'm going to hit enter. So now the next thing we're being asked is, what is your project name? Okay, now we know that our project is called EncScribe. However, I am somewhat confusingly going to type front end here. We'll come back to see why I typed that. I'm going to hit enter. Select a tool chain, okay? There's some tools that you can add to your project to help you out. We're going to use ESLint, and we're going to see what that does. Hit enter. Would you like to initialize a new Git repository? I'm going to select no. Okay, and you can do that with the arrow keys on the side, right? I'm going to select no. Why? We are already in a Git repository. Okay, remember, because we got it from GitHub onto our computer? Yeah, we are already inside it. So we do not need to create a new one. And I'm going to hit enter. And it's just going to confirm that this is what we want. Okay, project name is front end. Location is going to be where we are right now. The framework is React. Don't worry about what this means, but it's fine for it to be a file router. Package manager, pnpm. Other add-ons, ESLint. Yes. Initialize Git repository? No. Install dependencies? Yes. Agent skills? No. Okay, fine. And so we're going to continue with these settings? Yes, indeed. I'm going to hit enter. And now things are going to start happening. And when they're happening in the background, I want you to look at this project. Okay, so we have front end, a folder called front end. Okay, if I open it, you can already see a large number of files already populating our project. Let me go back to the terminal, and we can see dependencies are still being installed via pnpm, our package manager. Okay, so we're going to wait for this to finish. Okay, it's generating a route tree. Okay, it's done. All right, and then, so it says, hey, your TanStack application is ready in the front end folder. Okay, It's fine. Use the following commands to start your application. Okay, let's actually, let's do what it says. Let's do what it says. So right now, I'm going to cd, we've seen cd before, space front end, which is the name of our project that we chose up here, remember? Where was it? It was right here, okay? I'm going to cd into front end, as they say over here. I'm going to hit enter. Now I'm in the front end folder. And then the other command I have to do is pnpm dev. I'm just going to copy by right-clicking and right-clicking here, hitting enter. And we see something's happening. Let's wait just a few more seconds. Okay, so we see something happening over there. And then I myself get a window pop up on my screen asking if I want to allow Node.js to access public and private networks. You know, I'm going to say allow. I'm going to click allow, and there we go. We see this, okay, which is, by the way, still in the same terminal that we were in a second ago. In fact, we can just scroll up to see everything that we've been doing. I'm going to scroll back down, and we see this URL, which we have to open in a browser. So I'm going to select that, right-click to copy, and then I'm going to open, okay, you know what? Let me use Chrome, right? Chrome usually works slightly better than other browsers for development. Okay, and in the URL bar, I'm going to paste that URL. I'm going to hit enter. Okay, we see things happening on the screen. So right now, because this is, this project was set up for us, we can see that this is indeed the home page, and it's instructing us to edit this file to get started. Okay, so this is more of like a placeholder text that we are then going to edit and add more pages and more colors and more functionality as we build the application. Let me just minimize this page. And I'm not going to touch this for now. Let me go to the checklist and see where we're at. So I've done all this. Okay, let's unclick that. So, let's test that Tailwind works. What is Tailwind? Now, remember a couple of seconds ago, when I said that we are not using vanilla HTML, CSS, and JavaScript? Remember when I said that? Oh, okay. Just because we're not using these technologies in a vanilla fashion, in other words, we're going through a framework, that does not mean we're not going to be writing HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. We're still going to be writing these, okay? But it's just going to be slightly differently. Now for CSS, which is the thing that's going to help us style our layouts, okay, we're going to be using Tailwind. Tailwind is already inside of our project, okay? Now, again, there are many files that have been generated by the command that we use to start up our front-end project. We don't need to know what all these files do right now, but we will explain them as we encounter them. In fact, when you're catching up, when you continue to catch up, you're going to see us go through some of these files and to say what they do. But right now, our concern is we want to test, according to our checklist, we want to test if Tailwind is working. Okay, so you know what? Let me go to the Tailwind homepage. I just type Tailwind in my browser and I can see Tailwind CSS, rapidly build modern websites without ever leaving your markup. That's what it says. Okay, without ever leaving your HTML. Okay, so this is Tailwind and this is all the documentation. So as you can see, we're going to be writing our CSS inside of the actual elements, okay? And this is just a demonstration on their page of the effect of that on the right, sorry. Okay, so you can change the text, however you like, right inside of your HTML. Yeah, this is still HTML, right? Yeah. And so this is what we're going to do. So now we have to test if Tailwind is working. The way you write Tailwind is there's so much stuff to know if you haven't done Tailwind before, but we don't have to know all of it right now, okay? But just know that, if I want to change the color of something, there is a Tailwind way to do it. If I want to change the width of something, there's a Tailwind way to do it, etc., etc. If I want some animations, there is a way that Tailwind can do that. And so we're going to leverage all that to do our CSS for our application. So how do we test that this is working? Let me minimize everything. Minimize this. This is our code. Okay. Now, make sure that when we typed pnpm dev, what we did was we started the front end server. Okay. And because the front end server is running, that's the only way that we can see this page, right? If I refresh it, okay, it shows the same page. Now, if I accidentally, maybe Control C, or if I close this tab, for example, let me just Control C. If I do that, now we're back to our normal terminal prompt. Okay, let me even clear the screen. If I do this and I try to restart this page, you can see that it starts loading and it says, oh, the site can't be reached. Why? Because the front end server, which was serving the site to our browser, is not running anymore. Okay, so if you find yourself in the situation where the site can't be reached, but you're confused why, it is probably because you accidentally stopped the front end server. But that's fine because you can start the front end server again. Make sure you're inside of the front end folder in your project, okay? So make sure you're in there for everything to work. So to do that, you do pnpm space dev. Hit enter, and that is going to, again, give us back this, which again, if we now, okay, it has already refreshed the browser. And here's our project, okay? So yeah, leave this running for as long as you would like this to also be running. Okay, so we're going to test Tailwind. To do that, I'm going to put this window on the side and bring our code, which is currently in Visual Studio Code. I'm going to bring that again. So what I'm going to do as a small test is I'm going to change the color of this text to maybe red or something, right? And so, but here's a bit of, okay, you know what? Let me split this. Bring the browser at the top and our code at the bottom. Those of you who have two screens and are extending, you're going to have a better time. But because you can only see one of the screens, I have to split it. Okay. So again, one thing to remember is we don't need to know what all these files are right now. In fact, there's so many things which you don't have to know right now, right? But we're just going to focus on what we need at the moment and try to get ourselves familiar with that stuff. And then as we add on, as you will see when you continue with your catching up, you're going to see that we're going to explore more and more and more. But right now, we just need to find where this welcome to Tanstack Start text is in our project, right? Because look, I mean, there are many files. Where even do we begin? Okay, like there's no way. Are you going to click every file just to see where it is? Now I know where it is, but I'm just trying to do it from the perspective of someone who doesn't even know where to begin. Okay. Now, luckily for us, Visual Studio Code lets you search your entire project. Okay. And what we want to do is we want to search for these exact words. The idea being this word must be in only one file. And so if we find where the word is, then we have found the file. Okay. So how do you do that? How do you search? One way you can do it is you can use the search icon on the left here. And I'm going to, now this is a search and replace, but I just want to use the search part. And so I'm going to paste in welcome to Tanstack Start. And we can see that we have some results down here. Let me zoom in. We can see that we have a file index.tsx. Okay, where's that file located? In front end src routes. Okay, now if I click here or even here, okay, if I click up here, it's just going to collapse and expand. But if I click down here, which is the match, okay, remember we're searching for welcome to Tanstack Start. Yeah, this is the match. So if I click that match, indeed, I get dropped into the file that has this text. Okay, let me zoom out. Again, don't mind if all this stuff right now looks a bit alien to you. We just need to focus on this line, okay? We just need to focus on line 8, right? So we can see that line 8, okay, this is HTML, right? You have a div, you have an H1, you have a paragraph, which is this text over here. It's in a paragraph. Actually, let me close this search. Matter of fact, in order to avoid replacing things accidentally, let me just remove this and click this one more time to give us some space. Okay, so I'm going to change in order to test Tailwind, which was the whole point, I'm going to change some things about this text. Let's see, I can already see text for Excel. What happens if I say just Excel? Better remove that. And indeed, you see, the text has already become small. Can I go 6XL? Indeed, I can. And the text is big. Actually, that is enough confirmation that Tailwind is working. Okay, so text XL, font bold, these are all Tailwind isms. Okay, these are all Tailwind isms, which, for example, if I want to explore the possibilities that I can have with text, I can go to the documentation, right? Remember this, and I can come up here and I can say, I'm interested in things that I can do with text. You can see we can wrap text, we can indent text, we can even add a text shadow. We can do a bunch of things. So probably what I'm looking for is like size related. Okay, so we have font size over here. Let me click font size. Okay, and we see that the possibilities you have are text XS, which is extra small. You have small, you have base, you have large text, you have extra large text, 2XL, 3XL, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9XL. Okay, so you can't use 10XL because Tailwind does not have that by default. Okay, so these are the sizes that you can have, for example. Extra small, let's see what extra small is. Instead of 6XL, let me see XS. That should be tiny, and indeed it is. Okay. All right. Let's go to 4XL, for example. By the way, two things are happening here that may not be obvious. The first thing is, in order for the browser to change, this file that I'm editing first has to be saved. Okay. Now, I haven't saved the thing. It kind of saved itself. And that's only because, I'm going to maximize this for a second. That's only because I have autosave setting enabled. So I've told VS Code, without me clicking Control S, which is how you save, just autosave for me after like a couple of seconds. Where do you find that setting? I'm going to go down here to setting, settings, and I'm going to say autosave. And indeed, I see the autosave options on the right. I have mine set to autosave after a delay, right? How big is that delay? 2000 milliseconds, which is 2 seconds. Okay, so that's why I'm not bothering to save this file. If I had had it off, let me just show you. Type autosave again. If I had this off, for example, what would have happened is, now if I say text extra small, XS, sorry, there's no 4XS, nothing's happening, right? Yeah, because I have to save this file manually by hitting Control S. How do you know a file is not saved? You will see this white dot over there. Do not be tempted to click it, because when you go and click it, you'll find an X and you will close your file, okay? But a white dot is an indication that this file is not saved. So now if I Control S, we can see indeed the text is changing. I'm going to put back my autosave setting though. So let me go to this settings icon, settings, type autosave. I'm going to take this back to after a delay. Okay, I just wanted to call that out. So that's the first thing that's happening is for this to change, I have to save the file. The second thing that's happening is this thing is changing when I save the file. How is it doing that? Well, if I go back to our terminal, oh, there's been a lot of things happening. You can see this thing here called Vite. Vite is what is allowing that to happen. Okay, Vite is, we're going to encounter Vite again for other things, but right now just know Vite is the thing that is allowing for us to change the code, and then the browser changes without us having to refresh the browser. Okay, and so let me put that to 4xs. Nothing happens because 4xx doesn't exist. We do 4xl. There you go. Okay, the whole point of this was to change the color to red. I happen to know that to do that, you say text dash, and then you can say red, maybe 500. There you go. So now the color's changed. But there are things that are happening in my terminal that may not happen on yours. For example, when I was typing text, you can see I have this drop down. This may not happen to you by default because there are some things you have to install for that. Okay, but let me just do red 500, and that's going to be red. Okay. Let me say slate. So not slate, amber 500. Okay, maybe 800. The bigger the number, the darker the color. 800's very, very dark. There's even 900. How do I know? I can go to the documentation again. I mean, these days you can ask, you know, your LLMs, right? Your agents for things. But this is something that you can do on your own. I can say Tailwind colors. And I see over here, core concepts. And yeah, we see the colors that I can use. Okay, so I've used red. 50 is the lightest. 950 is the darkest version of that color. Okay, I've just used amber. All right, we have a bunch of colors here. Mauve and maybe olive. These are new colors, okay, that they added at the time of this recording. Okay, yeah, so these are the colors that are available. That's how I know them. Okay, so we've tested the Tailwind works. Back to our checklist. Okay, and then we're going to edit the index.tsx file. Index.tsx happens to be where we already are. Okay, now hold on a second. What if I accidentally closed the file? What would I do? Right? I mean, what if you knew that the file was called index something something, but you had forgotten that you could search for this text? In fact, what if you don't have this text anymore? How do you find the file? Well, the first way you can do it is you can go to the Explorer and you can remember that most of the files that we're going to do in this project are inside of src. Okay. And then you can say, okay, I don't see any index. Maybe let me go to routes. Oh yeah, there it is. Okay, so you click that and you're like, oh yeah, I remember. Okay. However, if you don't want to go through this, what you can do is you can say Control Shift P. Actually, no, the shift is not necessary. If you do Control Shift P, you'll enter into command mode. This is not what I actually wanted. Let me hit escape. Control P is what I wanted without the shift. Okay, it can already show you the recently opened files, and you can, if I click here, I'll go back to index.tsx. Okay, if I did Control P, and there was another file here that wasn't index.tsx, I can start typing index, and I can see the files. There are two, index.html, index.tsx. I'm going to click index.tsx, and we're back here. Okay, just to let you know that you can search for a file using Control P. You just start typing, and the file will show up in the options if it exists. Okay. So we said edit. You know what? Let me edit this from welcome to Tanstack start to welcome to scribe. Okay, again, I have autosave turned on, and so there it goes. And Let me put this to you have no notes or something like this. Remember, we're doing an encrypted note-taking application. Let me save that. Okay, we're done. Edit. Now let's commit. Let's commit our changes. Okay. Remember, our project is being tracked by Git. Okay, by Git. We have the project on GitHub. Remember back here when we did this? Now, if I refresh the page, the files that we have on our editor here in VS Code, all these files, they don't exist yet, right? They haven't shown up yet in our GitHub. And so what we're going to do is we're going to push them there. We're going to push them from our computer all the way up here, just so they can stay synchronized, And to do that, we have to do this thing called a commit, which you now know because, again, you've watched the Git session. Now, you can commit from the terminal and all that stuff and push from the terminal. But since we're already in our IDE, I'm going to do it from here. Okay, so I'm going to go to here, this source control. And when I do, okay, let me give us some space. What do I see? I see many changes that have happened, okay? And these changes are from the files that were generated when we had done the command to set everything up, okay? So I want to, you know what? I will get all the changes there. I will go to here, up here in the changes row, and I see a plus sign here, which is going to add all of these changes, okay? You can add changes one by one. I've added that, and you can see everything we're adding is going from changes to staged changes, okay? But I don't want to do one by one. I actually want to do everything, and so I can go here. I can click this plus sign up here. And now everything is under staged changes. And now, okay, I haven't committed yet. I have to give some kind of message before I commit. So I'm going to say, in the message bar up here, I'm going to say, what's this commit going to do? This commit is going to set up the front end project, from Tanstack or something like this, right? Your message can be different as long as your message completes the sentence. This commit will, set up the front end. You're fine. Set up the front end project, or even, let me say, this commit will add starter files to the front end project. If you want to add even more information, you can hit enter and enter again. So we have a blank line here, and then you can start adding your information. For example, you can say, used Tanstack to create the project structure, something like that. And then you can commit. But committing is just, this is still on our computer. It goes back to GitHub when you click sync. Okay, I've clicked sync messages. Sync changes. And now it's taking all those things that we've done on our computer and pushing them back up to GitHub. So if I go back to GitHub, I don't see anything here, but I have to refresh my screen, or my browser rather, and I can see this here, front end folder, which was committed just now. And if I go inside, indeed, I can see all of our project files, which again, we don't need to know what these do right now. Okay, but yeah, so we've committed and pushed. So in our checklist, I'm going to check that. And so now, all we're left to do now is to, finish our checklist until the end. So let's do that. The next item in our checklist is to add the Tailwind CSS class sorting prettier plugin. We'll see what this means. Everything that we've been typing here, text for Excel, text Amber 800, font bold, MT4. These are Tailwind classes, okay? And you can have many many Tailwind classes just for this. If, depending on how you want it to behave when you hover your mouse button, when you click, what do you want it for buttons, And so there can be many of these. And this plugin just helps us tidy things a little bit by sorting all those classes, okay, for us. Which generally produces like a consistent order of those things, okay? And to do that, I could go to this GitHub page, but I could also just use this command. pnpm add d prettier. Okay, so we're adding two things. We're adding prettier, and then we're adding the plugin itself, okay? So I'm going to go to a terminal. Remember, I don't want to disturb this front end server from running. Okay, so I'm going to just create a new tab in my terminal. Now I do have to go back to this location though. Okay, I have to go back to the front end folder in our project. So, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say cd, this thing, so it's called tilde. I'm going to say, this is in the desktop. Okay, this is Scribe Catchup and front end. Remember, I'm hitting tab to autocomplete for me. Hit enter. Okay, so now we're here. We're in the front end folder, which again, let me clear my screen. If I do ls, remember ls lists all the files and folders in our location. I'm going to hit enter and we can see all of the files and folders exactly as we see it when we do this. Let's see when we do this. So yeah, front end shows everything here. It's the same thing that we see here. Okay, just again, more demonstration that you can go to a location in multiple ways, right? This way just happens to be via the terminal. Anyway, that wasn't even the point. I'm going to clear. And the point was, we're setting up this plugin, right? And I just want to, let me see, copy this, paste it in the terminal by just right-clicking. It's going to do that. Now, you have to be in the front end location, right? For example, let me show you something. So if I mistakenly, let's say I was just in the Scribe Catchup and I wasn't inside of front end. So let me go out one step, cd ... and hit enter. Okay, see, so now I'm just in Scribe Catchup, right? If I try to do this command and I wasn't paying attention and I hit enter, okay, it would have still worked. But unfortunately, it would have now introduced another package.json here, another node modules here, okay, which is not where we want these files. Okay, so I'm going to delete this. I was actually expecting it to give me an error, but it turns out it just works, but it creates extra things where we don't expect them. Okay, we want these files to be inside of the front end folder, not outside. So be careful where you run those commands from. I'm going to delete this. I'm going to delete that. And I'm going to delete that. Okay, so I'm going to go back into the front end folder, cd, change directory or change folder into the front end folder. Hit enter, and now we're back here. Okay, clear the screen. Now I'm going to run the command there. All right, so there are a couple of things that have happened. One of the things that have happened is that, when pnpm was kind of resolving the dependencies for us, in other words, finding out who's compatible with whom, it found that two of them were, or at least there was a package that we had whose version was not satisfactory for something else. Okay, so we have an unmet peer dependency here thing. And then we also have yet another warning over here. Okay. Now let's fix one at a time. Let's start with the unmet peer one. The unmet peer one is saying you have ESLint in your project, right? You have ESLint in your project. Okay. But it expected ESLint version 10.0.0. Instead, it found version 9.3, 9.5. So these versions that we have is not what it expected. We have 9.3, 9.5. It expected 10. So now what we can do, we can install this version. I'm going to select this, copy that, pnpm install, paste it there, hit enter. Okay, and we have a message that just says that it has done the thing, but we still have this this warning over here. What's this warning about? Well, pnpm tries to protect you a little bit. In the same, remember at the start when we did this over here, when we did this PowerShell thing where we did execution policies, that was PowerShell trying to protect us, right, from running scripts. Because scripts can be dangerous if you don't know where they're from, okay? A script is just a program that runs on your computer to do something, right? So PowerShell was protecting us over here. And what we did is we said, no, PowerShell, it's fine. Just allow the current user to run scripts. Now, even pnpm itself is trying to protect us. It says, look, you have to explicitly approve this script or this package for making changes. You have to approve it to make changes to the project, okay? So it's pnpm is also trying to protect us on the package level, okay? And so UNRS resolver is fine. There's nothing malicious about this package. And so we can approve it to do whatever it wants in our project, okay? And so I'm going to go here. The nice thing is some of these messages tell us what to do. So it says, run pnpm approved builds. Okay, I'm going to copy that. Don't copy the quotation marks, just copy the command inside it. And I paste it there. I'm going to hit enter. And now we see here, which may be hard to see actually. Okay, there you go. So we have another menu, and we're told how to interact with it. You know, choose which packages to build. Press space to select. Okay. A to toggle all. Now we only have one, so we don't need to use this. I to invert selection. We don't need to worry about these two. We are interested in the space. Right now the arrow is pointing at UNRS resolver, which is what was being blocked over here, recall? Right, so we want to select this by hitting the space bar. And you can see this dot turns to white. And so now I can hit enter. Okay, it's still going to say the next packages will now be built. Okay, do you approve? Okay, this is a second approval. I'm going to hit Y, you know, for true. See, Y or N? Yeah, I hit Y for true, and now everything's fine. We have resolved the dependency version mismatch, and we have also allowed UNRS resolver to run itself in our project. Okay, clear the screen. You may wonder why there are all these safeguards at the package level. Is because, well, of recent, at the time of recording, there have been some malicious actors who have gone and tried to make life difficult for everyone in the web development scene, right? By injecting, you know, malicious code and then having everyone download that stuff. And so, yeah, so recently now you have to explicitly approve things. PNPM was always like this, okay? You had to explicitly approve things. NPM was not, okay? But I think now it has kind of fixed itself. But yeah, this is the reason why all these safeguards exist, is because you're downloading people's code that you've never met these people. You're kind of trusting that everything they're doing that you're using in your own project, right, which your users are going to use, is fine, okay? Sometimes that's not the case. So sometimes you have to explicitly say, I allow this, I don't allow this, etc., etc. Okay, let me clear the screen. So we have, the point of all this was, okay, there has been some loud music that has started in my background out of nowhere. Hopefully I'm louder than it. Okay, so excuse me for that. Um, it's very loud though, and it's coming from very far, but it's okay. We move, we continue, right? So the point was we wanted to add this Tailwind CSS class sorting plugin. Okay, and so you see, we have installed any unmet dependencies. We have done that when we fixed the peer dependencies thing. This is what this is. So now the next thing we have to do is to create we need to create a file. Dot, there's a dot at the beginning, okay? There's a dot prettier RC file in our repository, okay, in the front end folder. It doesn't exist yet. So, okay, as you can see, if the file does not exist in your project, create it right inside the front end directory. Okay. So again, we can check that the file exists by Control P dot prettier. No, we have prettier ignore, but we don't have prettier RC. Okay, so I'm going to create that file inside the front end folder. Okay, so I'm going to go into here. Inside of front end, I'm going to click new file. Okay, I'm going to paste the name. Okay, we've created the prettier RC. What else does our checklist say? Make sure the file name actually has a dot in front of it. Not prettier RC, but dot prettier RC. Okay, we've done that. So we've done this item as well. Excuse me. Next, add this line inside that prettier RC file that we just created. Okay, fine. I'm gonna copy this. I'm gonna paste it there. Okay, now because of autosave, again, this is saved for me. Okay. Okay, and then what else? Oh, that's done. Okay. And the thing that we're doing right now is prettier is going to be our formatter. Okay, it's gonna format our code. Okay, but we have to have a prettier RC file in our code base for the extension that we're going to install to recognize that we want to use prettier. Okay, I've oversimplified that explanation, but that is what's happening. We're setting up prettier, and so we also have to install the extension. Let me see. Not now, the extension we're talking about is not a browser extension. It is an extension inside of VS Code itself. Okay, and so let me go to the checklist again. Oh, okay, I can see that the image is missing. Let me just fix that literally right now. So this is the plugin, Prettier. This is the one. So to get the plugin installed into Visual Studio Code, I'm going to go to this here icon with many squares. This is the extensions one. I am going to, okay, I have some updates to do, but I don't want to worry about those right now. I'm going to go up here and I'm going to type prettier. Oh, okay. Looks like I already had it because if I click here, okay, I already had it. If you didn't have it, this would, one of these would be an install button, which you would click. Okay, yeah. So I already had it. I already had the prettier plugin. What's the next? Okay, so I'm done with that. What's the next one? Commit. Okay. What are we committing? Well, first of all, let me show you what the plugin actually does, right? One of the things that it does is we're going to be writing a lot of Tailwind, right? This welcome to Ankscribe, that's how I say it. Welcome to Ankscribe text could have many styles, right? Not just the text, font, and other text thing. You could have so many things in here. But that's not the point. The point is sometimes, because look, it doesn't actually matter where this font bold appears. I could have typed font bold in the beginning. I could have typed it at the end over here. Yeah, so it really doesn't matter. Let me see what else I could have done here. I could have even like rotated the text. I just want to add more things so you can see. So I can say maybe rotate by 15 degrees. Okay, let's see. Maybe let me do 1 degree. So you can see that it's slanting a bit, right? So the point I'm trying to make is you can have as many Tailwind classes here. Now let's see what happens when I save. Font bold is here, right? When I save, oh look, it has changed. The rotate is now at the beginning, font bold is now here, text amber is now at the end, right? So the order of these classes has changed, has been sorted. Okay, now unfortunately it hasn't been sorted alphabetically, right? So you still have to do some hunting, but the thing that's automatically sorting these classes for us is indeed Prettier plugin. Okay, yeah. Now if you just install Prettier by itself and you don't do this, you will not get that. Okay. Oh yes, we had to commit. Let's see. Now we commit things if there are changes that have been made, and indeed there have. Let me remove this rotate, because that is going to, I don't actually want it rotated like this, but there you can imagine a design that requires a rotation like that. Okay. Control S. Oh, I don't have to do that. Force of habit. But we have to commit. We have to commit the changes that have happened right now. Just like we did the other ones. I'm going to go to source control. Okay, so a bunch of things have changed. I'm going to add them all because they're kind of part of the same change that happened. So I'm going to say, what have I done? I have this commit is going to add Prettier and also the Tailwind extension. Okay, so the first thing is this commit is going to add Prettier and Tailwind extension. What else did we do? Edit. Okay, test. This commit is also going to test Tailwind in that. Okay. I don't have to, I was going to say test Tailwind in index.tsx, but the thing is, Git, which is the one actually controlling this tracking of changes, knows the file that changed, okay? Now, okay, there are 4 files, so maybe, you know what, fine. Let me just say index.tsx, okay. It's up to you if this is relevant or not, but this is the commit message. I'm going to commit, and I'm going to push it back to GitHub, so it's up to date. Okay, so I've done the commit. Let's go to our checklist. We're almost done. One of the things that I've been taking for granted, and this is the one that gives me suggestions, right? So when I say, oh, text, the thing that is popping up this stuff, that is the next extension that we're going to install, which evidently I already have. Again, the image is, let me fix the image right now. Okay, there you go. And so this is the Tailwind CSS IntelliSense plugin, which I evidently already have. So I'm going to click here just to show you what that looks like. If I just type Tailwind, it is very likely I'll get it as the first. Okay, yeah, Tailwind CSS IntelliSense. Yeah, I already have it. Yours will have an install button. I have an uninstall button. Also, there's a new version, which I could update to, but I'll do that later after this recording. So our checklist item is done. Step 4, set up the UI layout according to the sketches. Now the sketches in question are these sketches. Remember these sketches? So we're trying to get our application from just being this to being something like this. That's what we're saying. Okay. And actually, let me just take a screenshot of this so I don't have to. Okay, so I've taken a screenshot of this. I've saved it on the desktop so that I can have the photo reference without having to find it. Okay, so there it is. This is what we're trying to do. Okay, this right here. All right, so let's do the checklist to see if we can get to here. Now for this one, I'm going to, again, split the screen top to bottom because I think that is the sensible way, most sensible way to do it. So the top and the bottom is our code. Okay, now there are going to be a lot of windows. That is a lot of things going on the screen, but it's fine. I will call them out. All right, so we have our code, our code at the bottom, our actual application at the top, and we're in the index.tsx file. Let me close everything else that is not that. Okay, and then I'm gonna bring up our checklist. First thing we have to do is to edit the src routes index.tsx file to add welcome to inscribe. I think we actually already have that. Welcome. Yeah, we already have that. So as an h1 element, let me see, is that true? Code is down here. Yeah, we already have that. So we can tick that. And then play around with a few Tailwind classes on this h1. We have also already done that. We did the size, we did the color, we even did the rotate. Done that. Yes, add the top bar. Now the top bar in question is this one here. This top bar. You see the one that has Joseph's vault? And then add out, yeah, this top bar over here. Now we're going to take some liberties with the colors. Okay. We're going to take some creative liberties with the colors. In fact, when you're catching up, you're going to see us change a bunch of things, right? These are just low fidelity sketches to get the point across. This is not the actual final UI, okay? You could have a UI that looks like this. Maybe it would even have some character, but this is not going to be our final UI. So we're going to add this top bar. How do you do that? Well, let's see. Add the top bar in __ root.tsx. Let's go to our code and find root.tsx. Control P, __. There it is. Root.tsx is right there. I click that, and this is the file. Let me close this extension for a second, and then let me go down again. So add the top bar in here with the usernames hard-coded for now. Okay, fine. Let me just go back here. First of all, if you notice in our browser, you have this circle at the end here. It's kind of bottom right. We don't need that right now. So I'm going to find this TanStack DevTools. Okay, this is opening from here and closing from here. See this line? Yeah, that's the whole thing. And I'm just going to delete that. Okay, so we can focus on this here outlet. So you see it's gone. Okay, so we have, okay. And now that we've deleted the TanStack routed stuff that was here, we have some underlines up here, because the thing we just deleted was using these two lines, but now that we've deleted it, these two lines are not being used. Okay, so that's what the squiggle is at this point. TanStack router DevTools panel is declared, but its value is never used. Okay, and we're not going to use it, so let me also remove this, just for, we don't need things that we don't need. So doing that. Okay. Again, I'm going to repeat, for now, don't get overwhelmed. I don't know. I mean, it's not something you can just not, but, don't get overwhelmed with everything that we're seeing. We're just going to focus on specific portions, and then everything else will follow suit as we proceed. Okay. So I've just deleted things we didn't need, but we haven't actually done this. So add the top bar. Okay. To add the top bar, first of all, what is an outlet? What is this outlet thing? Every page, you can imagine, okay, imagine this outlet like this. So you have your application, right? You have an application with pages, right? Some pages, maybe you have a welcome thingy right here. And okay, maybe your application also has some other page, which is like, your dashboard or something. Okay, so to drive the point home, I have made these full screen. Okay, the pages are in yellow. Okay, pages are in yellow here. It doesn't matter if we're perfect here. Now, these pages, you can imagine as this being the outlet. Okay, so the outlet, anything inside of outlet, we have outlet like this. You can imagine as outlet kind of wrapping the page, okay? You can imagine it like this. So all pages are going to be inside of the outlet. The outlet is the page, kind of. So that's what that is. So whatever page you have in your application, outlet is going to be there. just quietly wrapping the entire page. So this page is inside of outlet. This page is also inside of outlet. Okay. Now, the reason that's important is because so outlet is like a container for pages in our application. But if we recall over here, no matter which page, okay, that's not really true, excluding sign up and login. No matter which page that we're on in this application, this top bar is going to be there, right? Joseph's Vault add note is going to be there in the add note one. It's going to be there here, of course, and it's even going to be there over here. Okay, so no matter which page we're in, and okay, this application really has just one page, right? So everything is happening on this screen. But you can imagine if we had other pages, like maybe for settings, right? User settings in our application, the top bar would probably still be there. Now it may change, but the point I'm trying to make is top bar is going to be there regardless of which page we're going to be in. Now, if the top bar is going to be there regardless of which page we're going to be in, and we have said that the outlet is what wraps the pages that we are on, therefore, in order to have the top bar outside of the outlet, in other words, right? Because technically the top bar is going to be at the top no matter what the page is. Okay, it means that the outlet starts from here and ends here, but the top bar is somehow on top of the outlet, if that makes any sense. This top bar, which is going to be persistent, is going to be on top of this outlet part. Okay, because outlet is the page, top bar is going to be there no matter what page you're on. So top bar is kind of independent of the outlet. It's going to be above it. All right. Okay, and we're going to use that also in our code, right? So here's the outlet, like so. But we can put the top bar over here. Now, how do you put a top bar over there? If you're familiar with HTML, this top bar is, let me bring the image. Top bar is a contain, it's a section, okay? It's a section of the screen, okay? So it's its own container that contains other things inside it. And a general container is a div, okay? So three things are happening. I have the image here, which will come in and out. I also have the editor here and the actual web page. So we have a div here. We've created a div, but nothing has happened. Let's give the div a height. We're going to do this by styling the div, which we're going to do using Tailwind. Anytime you want to style something with Tailwind, you start with the word class name. Class name equals, and then you start writing your Tailwind classes. So I'm going to give it a height of maybe, I don't know, H10. Okay, still nothing's happening, but oh, you see something moving down though. Let's give this a background color. BG what? Gray? Maybe gray 50? Maybe that. Okay, that's too faint. Gray 100. Yeah, okay, so now you can see something clearly at the top here, right? Okay, so I have here, H10, gray 100. Maybe let me say H12. Make it a little bit more pronounced in terms of height. 14 probably. Okay, that's fine. So we have this at the top here. You can even give it a border, but I don't think that will be a good idea. Well, actually, hold on. If you say border 1, okay. Border 1, that gives a border around the whole thing. What if I only want the border at the bottom here? I could say border B is for bottom. Border B1, and you can see the border is now at the bottom. Alternatively, oh, we're getting a underline. It's not an error per se, but it's saying the class border B1 can be written as border B. So I didn't even need the 1 here, is what it's saying. And same effect. However, I'd rather just use a shadow, I'd rather just come here and say shadow. And let me make it a large shadow. Shadow LG. Oh, and there you go. You can see a shadow right there. Okay, fine. Inside of the container, I have the words Joseph's Vault. Okay, and okay, all right, here's Joseph's Vault. Ah, okay, the screen was cut off a little bit. The browser was cut off a little bit. I have Joseph's Vault over here. Okay, what else do I have according to the picture? I have some kind of button over here with add note inside it. So, okay, let me do a button. Now, I'm going to wrap Joseph's Vault in a paragraph. A paragraph tag. Okay, and then I can introduce the button as well that says add note. Okay, that does not look like a button though. We'll fix that. Okay, so this is a button, but it doesn't look like a button. In fact, there are two things that don't even look like themselves. So for example, in our sketch, the Joseph's Vault and add button are side by side. Here, even if they don't look like themselves just right now, we can see obviously they're top to bottom over here. So let's fix that. The way you can fix that is there's this thing called flex, okay? And I'm going to make the parent of these two children. The children here are this paragraph and this button. They're inside of the div. And so the div is their parent. Okay, these are children inside of the parent. Okay, I'm going to go to the parent. I can click anywhere and I can say flex. So I'm saying parent become a flexible container. Oh, things have already started happening here. Parent flex. Now that should have fixed made these side by side because the default direction of flex is to go this way. But something isn't really working. So I think what this is, let's see, what's happening here? What is happening? We can always inspect. Inspect. Okay. The inspect will bring up this inspector in the browser. And I can see here. Okay, we're having flex there. Oh, I see. Gotcha. However, these are next to each other immediately. Well, first of all, Joseph's Vault is not even vertically in the center. So let me do that to all the children. I'm going to say items center. There you go. Okay, so now everyone, at least everyone is, vertically in the center. By the way, we are writing Tailwind, and these Tailwind classes are CSS in the background. There's CSS happening in the background that you cannot see. But if you really wanted to know what the CSS would have been for item center, you can hover over item center and look at that. This is what the CSS would have been. You would have had a class called item center, and then you would have said align item center, and that would have given you the same effect that we have here. Okay, flex would have done this, background color would have done this, H14 would have done this. So you can see for a lot of CSS, there is small Tailwind. Okay. Okay. So shadow LG. Okay. So everything's vertically aligned, but I want some space in the center of them. So I'm going to say justify space between. Let's see. Justify. Was it between or space between? It's just between. Okay. Gotcha. So, okay, you may not have seen that, but what happened was the add node button and Joseph's Vault are now super separate. There's a large space in the middle. So this has kind of separated them like this. I don't like that the words are right at the edge of this, right? This is right at the left edge, so right at the right edge. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to add some padding inside of this parent. I'm going to add some space on the left and right of this parent to push these two kind of closer together, okay? So they're just not touching the edge like that. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go here. How do you add padding? I'm adding padding to the parent. So I'm going to say P. Okay, at this point, I can say P what? P10, 20, 30. The bigger the number, the bigger the padding, the bigger the space. So if I say P10, for example, and you watch, okay, things have happened, but also the box has grown vertically, right? To kind of and if we inspect this, let me inspect this. I'm going to right click directly on here, click inspect. The inspector is your friend when you're doing web development. Okay. And also this inspector will be, okay, here's how it's going to look by default. It's going to be like that. Okay, let me close this. So if when you inspect on your side, it's probably going to show up on the side like this, which is actually fine. Actually, you know what? Maybe you can use this. Yeah, okay, I'll use it like this until I have to detach it, maybe to get more space. To do that, you go to the three dots and you click this here, and it's going to be detached. Still going to be active, as you can see when I hover. The items that are in the inspector are also highlighted here. Okay, so I'm interested in this here. These are indeed the children. You have the, yeah, let me zoom in. You have the paragraph here with Joseph's Vault and the button over here. Okay, this is the parent. Now, as you can see, let me scroll down here in styles. Scroll down here. The green stuff is the padding. Okay, the padding has kind of taken over everything, which is why this box itself has grown vertically as well as adding space. So space has been added to the top and also the bottom. And the effect of that is this has become large. Okay, so padding is here. What I had really wanted, I mean, yes, the space has in fact happened on the left and the right. But what I really, really actually wanted was for it to only happen in this direction. I didn't want to add space at the top and the bottom either. Okay. And so what I can do is, instead of saying just P10, I can say P, but in the X direction. PX 10. And then you can see the top and the bottom aren't affected, but it's now the X direction in which this padding of 10 has been added to the left and the right. Does that mean that the padding is of 10 pixels? No, because 10 is just a tailwind number. If you want to see what the actual number is, hover over it. It's actually 40 pixels, right? Okay. All right, so that's fine. But according to the sketches, okay, Joseph's Vault is in the middle, and then this button is over here, but that's fine. We actually, in the next session in your catch up, that's when we'll actually fix that placement for real. But right now, I want to make this button look like a button with tailwind. I'm going to say class name, because you always start like that. Let me start with a background color of, BG. Of amber, maybe amber 300 or something. If you look there, oh, indeed, we have here. But I need some padding between what? Between the text add note and its parent. Now, at this point, it depends on who you're talking about. Add note parent is the button, right? Because the add note text is inside. Maybe it's clearer to see it like this. The add note text is inside the button container. So this is its parent. Okay. Now the parent of button itself is this div. Okay. But here I'm going to add some padding. Let's see. Let me start with P4. I have no idea if that's it. I'm just experimenting. Okay, so P4 is, a bit big. I would like maybe, let me try padding in the X direction. That's fine. Yeah, let's make that 8. Okay, and then in the Y direction, let me just do like 2 or something. Kind of top and bottom here. Okay, that's fine. And you know what? I would like the button to be rounded. Rounded. XL, let's see what XL does. Okay, you see how the sharp corners are now rounded? Yeah, okay, so that's fine. Add note. I think that's sufficient for now. Let's see. Add the top bar with the user's name, hard-coded, and the add note button. Oh, we've done that. We've done that. We don't need to do much more. Oh, what do I mean by hard-coded? Hard-coded means usually in the application, this name would be the name of the user, right? If it was Maria, this would read Maria's vault. If it was John, this would have read John's vault. But right now it reads Joseph's vault just because we have written Joseph's vault there. We've kind of baked it into the paragraph. That's what hard coding means. Later, we will see how to actually grab the real user's name, but right now that's just hard coded. Okay, so we have add note over here. Okay, there are a number of things we can do to this button to make it kind of interactive. For example, let's see, for example, I want, if I hover over the button, for this to not be a cursor, but like, you know, that pointer, the pointer that you have, let me see if I can get it. Yeah, that pointer, that hand over there. You can do that. You can say, by the way, on this button, look, when I hover, colon. When I hover, what do I want? I want the cursor to be a pointer. I want the cursor to be a pointer. That's how you do it. So I want cursor pointer is another Tailwind class. Hover colon is how you say what you want to happen when you hover. Okay, so now if I hover, indeed I get a pointer. You know what? Actually, the other thing I want to happen when I hover is I want the color to be a little bit dark. The color of the button, I mean. So right now it has a background of amber 300, but now I want to say, you know what? Let me just hit the enter button. Hover BG amber 400. Right? Remember, the higher the number, the darker it is. So now you will notice something. When I say cursor pointer, I have a hover. When I want something else to happen when I hover, I have to say hover again and then do that other thing. Okay, so now when I hover, the cursor will be a pointer and the background will be amber 400, which is a little bit darker than amber 300. So let's see how that looks. Oh, would you look at that? Right? At that point, I can, you can do a bunch of things. Like when I click, right now, nothing happens. But I want when I click, now when you click, it's no longer a hover state. It's now called active. When the button is active, in other words, when I've clicked on it, I want the button to be a little bit smaller, right? So scale, maybe 98% of its normal size. So now you see that? See how it's, okay. And you know what? Maybe let me add a shadow to the button as well, just to draw more attention to it. Now this shadow is going to be just normally. It's not going to be on hover. It's not going to be on active. It's just going to be a normal shadow that's there. Shadow. I want it to be a small shadow. Shadow SM. Okay, very hard to see. Let me make it large. Okay, there you go. So now there's a shadow on there. It's up to you if you want to make this slightly larger or something. But okay, but now there's a shadow on there. And there's a button, which does nothing at the moment. You know, I'd like Joseph's vault to be a little bit bigger. So in the paragraph, I want to style it, right? When you want to style it with Tailwind, sorry, there's so many things happening in the browser, you know, hovering things are coming up, everything else is coming up, but let's focus on the actual tag. This paragraph is the one that has Joseph's vault in it. And I want this text to be large, so I'm going to say class name, maybe 2XL or something. Let's see. Oh, sorry, text 2XL. I can't just say 2XL. I have to say what the 2XL is being applied to, which is the text. Okay, yeah, that's fine. All right, so I think we're done for now with like the top bar. So I'm going to, we're done with that. Add in the main page area at the bottom of the top bar the add note button 2. Okay. In other words, this add note button, according to our picture, exists at the top. but it also exists down here. In other words, there are two buttons, one at the top bar. Again, don't worry about the placement. We'll fix that in future sessions. You'll see as you catch up. Then there's yet another Add Note button at the bottom here. Okay. In fact, Welcome to Angscribe is no longer a thing in our application. So I'm going to remove it here based on the sketches. You could leave it there too if you wanted. Okay. But there are things that are happening here. For example, the text Welcome to Angscribe is not even in this file. It's not even here, right? Because remember, the reason we came to __root.tsx is because it had an outlet, which is the pages in your application. This is where they live. But we wanted the top bar to be outside of all that. And so we put the top bar here. And that's where the button is. But in order to put this button in here, we have to go somewhere else, right? It's not even on the same page. So where is that? Let me just copy this. First of all, let me just copy this. Okay. And then let's find where this text actually is. Now, because we remember, we know it's in index.tsx. It's also the only other open file. Okay. So chances are, indeed, there we go. Welcome to Angscribe. There's a paragraph saying you have no notes. And according to our sketches, the Add Note button is just under here. So let me paste the button that I had copied from the other one. Save. And yeah, okay. However, there's a bit of an issue because according to our sketches, this stuff is right in the center right here. Right now it isn't. So what's going on? Well, let me try to give this whole section a background color just so we can see it. Okay, it's not part of the design, but let me see this div here. This is the parent of everything inside here, including the H1, the paragraph, and the button. So I'm going to give this a background color. It already had a padding 8 attached to it. Let me give it a background color as well. BG, let me say slate. It's one of the colors, 100. So we can see how far this one goes. Oh, okay, not that far. Let me see, slate 300. Okay, see. So this page doesn't even extend to the bottom right here. It's just at the side. Like that is literally the height of it. Okay, it just starts up and stops there. So let's make the height at least take up the entire screen. Okay, because remember, in order for us to get these things in the center here, according to our sketches, for example, the parent at least has to reach here, right? For these to be here. Right now, the parent starts and stops right here. Okay, so let's give the parent some height. And what height are we going to give it? Well, we're going to give it the height of the entire screen. So H screen. That's all I did. And now at least, you know, the parent has stretched to take up the height of one full screen, like that. Okay. Now it just so happens that because the bar was on top of the parent, one full screen goes like this, and then it continues this distance. So right, it goes down like that. Okay, but that's fine. Okay, so now we have the parent going all the way. So now we can put these children right in the middle. And how do we do that? Well, first of all, let me remove this P over here, this padding. Don't need that padding. Move that. And yes, that means that now everything's going to start from the edge, right? Because there's no more space, right? Padding is just space between a container and its children. Okay, so now, because I vanished the padding, there's no more space over here, okay? But that's fine because we don't even want this to be at the edge. We want it to be in the center. So how do we do? that, we come here to the parent still, and we say, I want the parent to be a flexible container. If I had just stopped there, we can see that now the children are arranging themselves from side to side. Okay, what we really want is the children to arrange themselves from top to bottom in a column fashion. So flex, and I want to say, by the way, flex is going to be column. Sorry, there's so much happening. And so, okay, so now the children have gone from top to bottom. Okay, at least that's the start. And now I want them to be in the center. So I can say items center, and also justify center. Usually that centers things. Okay, so if you have a container and you want to center everything inside it vertically and horizontally, typically what you do is you make that container a flex container, and then you add item center, justify center. Both of these things present with flex will usually center whatever the children are. And so we have that. One more thing though. Well, first of all, this background is gonna go back to white. It was only gray just so we could see it. But now we need a bit of breathing space, okay? Some breathing space here. This text is directly above the button. We don't want that. So finally, let's give some space between here and the button, between this text and the button, and even, you know, between this text over here. The way we can do that is we can do it on the parent still. There are so many ways you can do this, okay? It's just that the most direct way to do it is on the parent, but you can certainly come up with other, you can experiment with other ways that you could have gotten this same space, okay? You can go to the children directly and do a thing there, but I'm just going to do it on the parent. So, excuse me. For this, actually, you know what? I should have been side by side this entire time. And there you go. And so I'm going to zoom out a little bit. I can go over here because now everything's in a columnar direction. And so in this parent, right, I can say, gap. I can give it a gap of like 10 maybe. There you go. And that gap is going to be in between the children. The only reason I can use gap is because I have this as flex. Okay, I can use gap. And yes, you can also say gap in the y direction. Right, oh, that's not going to do anything because it's already 10. So I can do that. And now, okay, and now let me remove the gray. That wasn't even supposed to be there. It was just there for visibility. I'm going to remove the gray by doing this. The gray is a background color, which is here, BG. And let me just remove that. And it's back to white. Okay, so now we have this and these two buttons like this. Okay, I think, yeah, you can either keep this or remove it. If you're catching up, in later sessions, I actually removed this. Okay, but yeah, this is fine. This is a good start. Let me go back to our checklist. So we have added in the main page area at the bottom of the top bar, add note button as well, like that. We did that. We did some content alignment, right? We did that. This text was originally here, and then we made the parent flex, and then the children arranged themselves from left to right, and then we changed the flex direction to column to have it top to bottom, but they were still kind of here. They were still concentrated here, and so we made the parent, first of all, as wide, or as tall rather, as tall as one screen, and then we moved the children to the center with justify center, items center. Okay, and then we gave the children some space by giving space in the parent. Okay, so we did all that. Okay, yes, these buttons don't do anything yet. Okay, as we've seen, when I click this or this, nothing happens. Okay, Now, when you catch up, you will see that what the buttons are actually going to do is, if I go back to the sketches, when I click the button, either button, by the way, there's going to pop up this form where we add our note, the one that we want to take in our application that will end up as encrypted on the database. Okay. Yeah. So that's really what's supposed to happen. Right now, nothing happens, but that's fine. So let's commit. I'm surprised I didn't have a commit here. Okay. So let me just commit. I'm going to commit with the message, something like, let's see, what have we done? This commit is going to add the front end design as the sketches. As the sketches showed. Maybe. Okay. So I'm going to copy this. And I'm going to go to VS Code. Okay. We have made a lot of changes. And so VS Code shows us that. Now we've made a lot of changes, but those changes were just in 2 files. That's why we see 2 files over here. I'm going to add those changes together because they're part of the same message, right? Add the front-end design as the sketches showed. Commit. Sync, which does a push back to GitHub. And then let's do something even more interesting. Let's put this application on the internet for the world to see, okay? And so let's do that. And to put your application on the internet is called deployment. Okay, so right now we're going to deploy. Let me just check that. We've actually done so much already, right? So we're going to deploy this application. Now, some people prefer to deploy their application after it's finished, okay? However, deploying right now is not bad, as long as you don't then tell your users that, hey, the app is ready, because it's not ready, right? But the reason we're deploying right now is so that if there are indeed some issues, we can find them early, right? We can find them early before the project has become so large and there's so many more files, right? It's nice to catch the deployment right now. Okay, so how are we going to do that? Well, let's go to our checklist. Create a GitHub account. Okay, we've already done that. In fact, that's where we've been pushing our code. Create a Vercel account. Okay, so let's do that. So I'm going to go to browser. Let me close some of these tabs just to save on some, RAM and processing power. Let me type Vercel. Okay, I'm typing Vercel right now. Let me just go to vercel.com. Okay, yeah. So Vercel is a platform. I was zoomed in so much. Vercel is a platform where you can deploy front ends. Okay, among other things, I would assume. But yeah, this is one of the common platforms where you can deploy your front end application. Yeah, for the world to see. You will also hear of Netlify. That's another common place to do that. But okay, we're going to be focused on Vercel right now. Okay, I'm sure there are other features that Vercel has, but for our uses right now, that's the only one that we care about. Okay, so I'm going to log in. I want to log into Vercel. Oh, by the way, okay, maybe I should show you how you're going to sign up. So I click sign up, and if you already have a GitHub account, which you really should, then you can continue with GitHub. And what that's going to do is it's going to detect that I would do this in the same browser that I am already logged into. Okay, and so it's going to connect those two. You hit continue, you grant whatever permissions Vercel is requiring, and then you come back and log in with your same GitHub account. Okay, that's probably the easiest way to do it. Okay, so after going through all that, then you come back to the login page, click continue with GitHub. Okay, I'll have to authorize Vercel again. So I continue. Okay. Two-factor authentication, because I did set that up for my account. Okay, but I also have a passkey, kind of a passwordless future that we're going towards. So passkeys. So I have to just click on here and I'm signed in. Your process may be a little bit different depending on how you set up your account. Okay, so I'm now in Vercel. Yours definitely will be different. If this is the first time you're into Vercel, this part will mostly be empty. Okay, but the thing that I'm interested in is, okay, we'll come back to here. We'll come back to here in a second. We'll come back to here in a second. So get a Vercel account. Notice we haven't paid anything. Okay, we haven't paid anything, so we're using the free tier. Right? It's very generous, actually. You can do a lot with the free tier Vercel account. But okay, I'm going to import the GitHub repository to Vercel via the add new option. Okay, so we've seen that. Add new over here. Add new what? I want to add a new project to here. But before I do that, there are some things we're going to have to know, because if you see this checklist, we're going to have to we're going to have to make some decisions about our project, okay? Including the directory, including the build directory, including the package manager, which remember is pnpm always in our case, and then the installation command. So you know what? Let's first do that locally. Let's do that locally and get familiar with what these concepts are. Okay, let's start with building. What is to build a project? Let's see. So I'm going to go here. Okay, I will remove these later, but my keyboard has changed back to United States International. Let's go. So let's start with what building is. Okay. In order for your project to reach the browsers of other users, remember we're doing web development, okay? So our users are going to interact with our applications via a browser, right? Most likely. In order for our stuff to reach the browser, and by stuff, I mean all this CSS that we've been writing, JavaScript when you get to it, when you've caught up, right? All that stuff has to be shipped or transferred to the browser of the user. Even Vercel, all the Vercel code that they wrote that I'm now using had to arrive at my browser, right? Had to be shipped to the browser, okay? And it's great for that process of transferring the data from wherever it is to the browser to be as quick as possible, to not take long, to be optimized in some ways, right? And so that's what building does. So how do you build a project? How do you build a project that specifically, how do you build this project? Okay, because remember, there are other ways you could have created this front-end application, right? We used React. You could have used something else. We used pnpm as our package manager. You could have used something else. So your command may be different if you are not following along, okay? But if you are following along, then the way we do that, again, make sure you're in the front end folder or directory. The way you do that is, I need you to watch something. I need you to watch this, okay? So I'm going to say pnpm build. Okay, we have seen pnpm dev, and we've seen that that's the command to start the front end server, which, by the way, is still running. Okay, I'm in a new tab, you see. So we've seen pnpm dev. There's also pnpm build, which if I hit enter, is going to build some stuff. Okay. And notice there is now a new dist directory or dist folder that has just been created. Okay. Now, if we were to take a glance here, we can see that 102 modules have been transformed, all that stuff. We see our index.html. We have some assets here, which, okay, you know what? Let me go to the dist directory that has just been created after the build. Let's see some assets. Okay, so we have some JavaScript files, because .js. We have some CSS files. Okay, so this is where all that tailwind that we've been writing goes. So let's look in there. We can see that this file exists, and I've claimed this is the file with all our styling. But notice something. there are almost no spaces in here, right? There's almost no white space. Okay, there's some over here, for example. Let's look at the JavaScript one. Yeah, barely readable, right? There's no spaces. There's no, enter button. It's very efficient. It has packed everything. It has minified. That's what that means. It has minified a bunch of things. To minify is to remove unnecessary, formatting things, right? That would be useful for a human being who is reading it, but the browser doesn't really care, and the meaning of the thing still remains the same. Okay, so to the browser, the browser can receive this and still understand what's happening. Okay, the browser can receive these styles and still understand what's happening, even if the spaces and all that formatting stuff has been stripped away. Okay, routes, yeah, right? So these files are compact. Okay, they've been minified. Okay, so that's one effect of building, is that you get files where you get your styles, you get your JavaScript, but in a way that's been minified, such that it can get to the browser faster. You see, because a space, it actually takes up space, right? If you had just a file of like 10,000 lines and all of them was just space, 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 right? That would still be a particular size, okay? So yeah, there are a lot of optimizations that happen in the build process, okay? And of course, we see our index.html. Okay, that one has gone untouched. Our images, of course, have gone untouched. There's a robots.txt and all that kind of stuff, okay? So the dist folder is the result of building our project via pnpm build, okay? Remember, we're using Vite, which is the one, by the way, so Vite also took part in this build. Vite also took part when we were developing, right? It's the one that was reloading the browser whenever we made a change in our code, right? So Vite is also part of this, plays a major role in this, okay? And the entire front end is in a folder called front end. Remember at the beginning of the project, when we were told to enter our project's name, I said front end. Yeah, because it just made sense naturally to say, oh, we're inside the nscribe catch-up repository. Here is everything concerned with the front end, right? So that's why I named it front end, because it made sense. Because when you catch up, you will also see another folder called backend. That's where all the Python stuff is going to be, okay? So that's why I named it front end. Okay, so knowing those things, that pnpm build is how you build a project, and that when you build the project, there's a dist folder that appears, okay? And also knowing that Vite played a part in our development, let's go back to Vercel, where we are going to deploy our application. Let's go back to Vercel, okay? So I'm going to say add new project. Now to the left-hand side, I can see all the repositories that are currently being identified by Vercel the last time I created my account and connected it to GitHub. Okay, so it's only seeing encscribe, which is the one that we are currently on with the current interns. We can see nscribe pre-session, which is the one that I use while practicing before the sessions, and we see some other stuff. But what we really want to deploy is nscribe catchup. This is the one that we've been working on this entire time. So if I go back to our VS Code, you can see at the top here, nscribe catchup. That's the one we want to deploy. So how do we do that? Well, first of all, I want to adjust my GitHub app permissions so I can tell Vercel that I have this new repository nscribe catchup. So let's do that. I'm going to click here. It's going to open this window that is going to ask, it's going to ask where I want to install Vercel. I'm going to say in my account, right? This is my GitHub account. Okay. And then I have to enter some kind of password or something. But again, I have a passkey. I have already set this up for my account, so I don't need to enter any of that. I click there, I say use passkey, and I click on my passkey, which is stored in a password manager. Okay, but now I'm in. And okay, so what do I do? Well, I'm going to scroll all the way down, and you see under repository access, I have this set up such that Vercel can only see selected repositories. So it can't see everything in my account. It has only selected ones. And so I have to select ngscribe catch-up as one of them. To do that, I click select repositories, and I go and this part is always unintuitive. If you try to click inside of this box that you want to start typing, it's going to disappear. So click and just start typing. So I'm going to say ngscribe catch-up. This is exactly the one. I'm going to click that and I'm going to save. Once I do that, look at this left-hand side. Well, let me refresh the page. It's probably not live. Okay, there you go. So it finally saw ngscribe catch-up. Okay, so now that I have this repository, I'm going to import it. I'm going to click import, and then I come to this form here where we have to make decisions. Okay, all right. So first thing is importing from GitHub. Yes, indeed, I want this to be ngscribe catch-up. Yes, we've already done that. What is the project name? I'm going to keep it as ngscribe catch-up, but you can change it if you want. The project name inside of RESTful, we mean. Application preset. Let's see what we have here. Okay, and these are many other frameworks that you could have used to create the same application. Okay, let's see. Angular, no. We're doing this, no. Well, some of them are frameworks. Others are different kind of way. Okay, Flask is a framework. Fast API is a framework. Oh yeah, all these are frameworks. All these are indeed frameworks. Now, okay, so what preset do we choose? Do we choose React? Well, not really. React is not even on here. What we have to choose is Vite. Okay, so Vite is the correct thing to choose because, I mean, we're using it in our application and it is among the options. So choose Vite. Root directory, what does that mean? That means where is your code? Where is your code? Okay, from your repository's point of view, where is your code? Our code is in the front end folder, right? All our front end code is inside the front end folder. And so that is what we should select back in Vercel. Now it won't let you click anything. You have to click edit. And then it's going to give you some options. It's going to identify the directories that you have in your repository. And indeed, it has seen front end. I'm going to click that once. And then I'm going to continue. Okay. So then we have this build and output settings. Okay. What is the build command? The build command is the same command that we used locally, pnpm build. And so I'm actually going to copy this from the terminal. And I can't just click in here. I have to first click the pencil. And then it will allow me to do this. pnpm build is my command. What is the output directory? In other words, which directory, when you build, what is the directory that gets created? Oh, we've seen this already. It is dist. Okay, so I'm going to come in here, click the pencil and say dist. That's it. What is the install command? In other words, how do I install all the dependencies of your front-end project? Now, we haven't actually seen this because it's kind of just been happening, right? When we set up our front-end application, we didn't need to do this command explicitly, but the command to install everything. So let's say someone has got your project and they want to make it run on their side. They have to go to the front-end folder of your project. And then if they want to install all the packages that we've been installing, they have to say pnpm install. That's the install command. Okay, and we can see that we still have UNRS resolver. Okay, I thought we'd fixed this, but maybe not. So let me do this pnpm approve builds. Okay, but this is the install command. Okay, let me approve builds one more. Select UNRS resolver, hit enter. The next packages will now be built. UNRS resolver. Yeah, we hit Y for yes. Okay, so has anything changed on our side? Not really. Okay, it's not like there has been a file that has changed on here, so we don't have to commit and push anything. Okay, well, that's fine. But anyway, so pnpm install is the command. Let me try that again. Now, it shouldn't install anything because we already have everything. So pnpm is smart enough to know that you already have everything required for your project. I'm not going to go to the internet and install things. Okay, so lock file is up to date, resolution step is skipped, and we're done. So this is the install command. Okay, pnpm install. Environment variables, do we have any? We do not. So I'm going to click deploy, And if everything goes correctly, in maybe a minute or two, or however long it takes to build our code base, just like we did back here locally, Vercel is going to do literally the same thing. And if you want to see the logs, you can open them. So these are all the steps that Vercel is going to go through to deploy our front-end application. Okay. And it's okay, it's done. There were no errors. It's done. And look at this, we have a page, which if we click on it, is going to open a browser, and indeed, there's our application. Look at that. Of course, again, the buttons don't do anything, okay? So everything is identical to how it was on our machines. But now if someone asks you, hey, can I take a look at the project that you're working on? You can now, instead of making them install everything on their computer, node, nvm, npm, and then installing things and going to Git, you can just give them now the link to your deployed application. Okay, so I'm going to copy, and if let's say I open this in a private window, to say that this is someone else, right? They can just paste it there, and it can be like, oh, okay, that's nice. Oh, very good progress, right? So you can now share this with the world, okay? And when you catch up, you will see that we make a lot of changes to this application and then keep pushing to GitHub. Vercel will automatically update. It will automatically update this deployed application when you commit and push. So the moment you push to the repository, Vercel will do the needful and update even the deployed application. If I refresh here. Yeah, you can see this tick. This success is from Vercel. And the success, yeah, deployment has completed. Yeah, so every time you push, Vercel is going to go through the build process. And then if you see a tick, you're fine. If you see an X, you're not fine. Okay. But yeah, we have now done that. We have imported the GitHub project into Vercel via the add new project by adjusting the GitHub app permissions, selecting the repository from the browser that popped up. We chose Vite as the project template. We chose front end as the directory that houses all of our front end code. We also picked dist as the output directory after building. And then pnpm build was how we built our project. We did that locally as well. And then pnpm install was our install command. Okay, and then our deployment is done. Yeah, so now you have set up the project from scratch. Okay, and now you can continue to catch up. Now, as you're catching up, I may have done, some styles in here that I didn't necessarily do in the video that you're watching. That's fine. You can either revert everything or, continue as you see fit. Okay, but as far as setting up is concerned, you are now set up. I promised this would be compacted, but it turns out just slightly compacted. So yeah, but thank you for following along, and I'll see you all next time.